Okay, thanks everybody for joining us today. Exciting day. We're announcing an integration between DefectDojo and Pixee. My name is Dawn and I run marketing here at DefectDojo. And just a couple of housekeeping things before we get started. Your video and audio will be off for the duration of the conversation. If you do have a question, you can put it in the chat or Q&A or raise your hand. And we'll unmute you to ask it, or you can just ask your question. The chat will address it. There is a demo portion of the presentation. So if there's something that you really want to ask a question about during the demo, please stop us then, just so that you can get your question answered when the graphics on the screen. And with that, I will turn it over to our first presenter, Greg Anderson from DefectDojo.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here today. My name is Greg Anderson, and I am the creator of DefectDojo. If you're not familiar with DefectDojo, it is a platform about making security scalable. So we aggregate the results from all of your favorite security tools. We enhance and distill them to make them easy to action and prioritize. And then finally, we ship those results to where developers actually like to work.
Thanks, Greg. Hello, everyone. My name is Surag Patel. I'm one of the co-founders of Pixee. We're excited to be here today with DefectDojo announcing our integration. For those of you who may not be familiar with Pixee, we are working on solving the last mile of the application security challenge by building an automated product security engineer. What we do is help rewrite code to fix vulnerabilities, harden the code, squash the bugs, and really give engineers back time to focus on the work that counts, is building features and adding capabilities, and spending less time either triaging or fixing findings coming out of their code scanner tools. That's who we are. With that, I thought we'd start with a demo today. So I'm going to walk us through a quick demo of what this integration looks like. It's actually a pretty seamless and easy thing to show off, which is nice. And we'll show you what the tools look like when they're all together. Let me just share my screen. There you go. I'll walk you through a demo of Pixee alongside DefectDojo, and both how you get it set up, which is actually really trivial and pretty quick, but also then like what the outcomes will look like when it comes to Pixee's ability to help you actually resolve and remediate findings out of your code scanner tools. That in this case, code scanners will find the vulnerabilities, they get sent to DefectDojo, and then DefectDojo, via DefectDojo, PixeeBot will know what needs to be fixed, and will help create pull requests to fix those issues. So let me show you what that looks like. You can see here, I'm going to use GitHub as a easy place to show this because it's a very seamless experience. We have an action that's published to the GitHub Marketplace that basically allows you to connect tooling to Pixee so that we have the context on what fixes need to be made. In this context, in this version of an integration, effectively, really all you have to do is kind of point the GitHub action to your DefectDojo instance. And there's a diagram here that'll show you what that looks like. And really all that's going to do is help send the results from your scanners and DefectDojo into Pixee so that it can fix it. This first example I'm going to show you is a repo that many of you may know about, especially those of you in the AppSec community, which is PyGoat, intentionally vulnerable application. In this case, this PyGoat instance has that action set up that I just showed you that is doing two things. It is running both a I'll just show you here in a moment. It is running a semgrep scan. Oops, wrong click. It's running both a semgrep scan. It's configured to run a semgrep scan. And then on the back end of that, you'll see right up here, on the back end of that, uploading a DefectDojo, and then DefectDojo sending it kind of back to Pixee to say, hey, here's what's prioritized and available in our backlog so that we can go fix it. On the back of that, PixeeBot then does its work. Here's where it's pretty automated. Effectively, we're delivering to a developer changes, rewritten code that helps solve for these things that DefectDojo has helped prioritize for you. The first thing we do is we create this dashboard so a developer can see everything that's happening. You know, like notice everything we've built is in the GitHub experience to make it easy. In this kind of dashboard that we create as a GitHub issue, we show you that there's two PRs that we opened. I just created all this last night so we can see it. There's two PRs that we opened. I'll show you in just a moment. There's another one available here that we haven't yet opened because we don't want to overwhelm a developer. But if a developer says, hey, yes, I also want this PR created, all they would do is type PixeeBot next here, and what will happen is you'll notice this is a feature we call where we're asking for the next PR. You'll notice the eyeballs just came on automatically, notifying you that our bot has seen it, and it's in a few minutes it's going to open up yet another PR for this other vulnerability that exists. Here's 2 examples of fixes that we made. Again, you'll notice the DefectDojo naming and convention having signifying that this came through the DefectDojo integration. And in this case, it's pretty, it's both straightforward and very important at the same time. We actually explained to you a little bit about the context here and running kind of unsolicited code in this specific vulnerability example. And maybe most importantly, what we've done is we've actually wrote the code, which is adding in the safe loader in this context, where a developer literally all they would have to do is they can see this, they can see it's passing all their checks, and they click merge pull request, and that's it. They've merged this vulnerability into that process. When that semgrep scan runs again, it will not find this vulnerability anymore. You'll notice, again, there's another finding here. This is yet another example of a different, more SQL injection type vulnerability example. Again, we write the code change for you, a developer, and parameterize the kind of query in the right way. A developer, all they really would have to do is click review and merge, and that would get going. And that's really kind of the bulk of the integration is this last mile of getting the fixes in place for you automatically. I'll show you one other kind of last example here is, I showed you Pygo, which is a very common one that we use often. Here's another example of a juice shop, which is more of a JavaScript application, where a very similar kind of context. We make a fix. In this case, it's a SQL injection type fix, where we rewrite the code and stick in your pipeline. The one interesting thing about this is this vulnerability exists in multiple places, in multiple files, and therefore you'll see like we make that same conceptual fix for one categorical issue in numerous places at the same time. So in one kind of 5-minute review process, the developer can squash out numerous findings from their scanner. That's really all I want to show today in the demo. If there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Otherwise, we'll get back to some of our Q&A.
Thank you, Surag. So just to sort of recap what we saw in that demo, the goal of DefectDojo is we want to get people to end-to-end security testing, potentially without human intervention, if you so choose. And what Surag and Pixee are doing is taking that baton and moving it to the finish line by creating the ability to auto-remediate findings, both with DefectDojo and other tools as well.
That's right. And I think our goal, Greg, we want to kind of, your point, like, that's exactly our goal. And I always add, like, our intention is not to take the human out of the loop, just to be clear. They still are the ones who get to click the merge button and validate the changes we make. But eliminate as much of the manual work that they have to do of rewriting code or validating the finding or figuring out how to fix it or where to fix it is really where we want to save a lot of time, because we've seen how challenging that can be in the past. Yeah, great. Any questions? Maybe we can take a quick pause for any questions at this point, and then we have a lot more things that Greg and I want to talk about, but let's stop. Let's see here.
Yeah, I do have a question, Surag.
Okay.
One is this an open or closed source product?
Oh, great question. 2 things I didn't mention in detail, but since it was asked, 2 things. One is, I know we're built in the 2024 generation of products and capabilities, but one thing I want to be very clear about, everything we do is actually not AI. We use AI we do use AI, but very selectively where it's actually additive. So actually 2 of the 3 changes I showed you actually use no AI at all, believe it or not. They used a foundation that we call CodeMonitor, that is an open source project that we published about a year ago. And what CodeMonitor is it allows you to identify patterns in code and rewrite them in very expressive ways, mostly deterministically, and then you can weave in AI if you really need it for very specific use cases. And so we've actually open sourced all of that. You can see how and where we make changes, what kinds of changes we make. It's all available on our docs website. Another reason why I think the DefectDojo Pixee combination is really interesting, and that we really strongly believe that transparency is key. You can see how and where we make changes, and we've spent a lot of time kind of building what we open sourced about a year ago, which is the foundation really of Pixee and automating fixes.
Yes, this integration is available for both open source and commercial versions of DefectDojo. We are looking to push that farther in the future with Pro, with additional metrics, insights, and more closely coupled integration. But what Surag showed today is available in both versions of DefectDojo.
Great.
And available today, correct? People can start using this today. Okay.
Yes.
I do have, oh, wait, we got another one coming in. For Surag, is GitLab on the roadmap for Pixee?
GitLab is more than on the roadmap. We've actually already started building it in many ways. We're working through it with a few kind of early, I don't know what to call them, design partners, feedback. So if you have GitLab and you'd like to give Pixee a shot, reach out to us. We would love to work with you and get your feedback on it. But we've already started working on it, and we actually have some offline ways through a CLI and other means to kind of connect it right now. But we're trying to make a more native experience like you see in GitHub as well in the very near future.
Okay, great. Thank you. I have one more. How do we maximize usage of the two platforms, and what does that look like with regard to outcomes?
Greg, you want to take that first?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I think about outcomes, I think different people have different goals and how much you want to trust the machines or not trust the machines, so to say. So I think a key focus for both Surag and I is to sort of meet you where you want to be from an experience perspective, but also give you the ability to on the DefectDojo side, reach full automation. I very much agree with Surag that what they're pioneering, the human element is great for the skeptics, if you will. But yeah, I think it really comes down to the outcomes that you're looking for. How automated do you want to get? How far do you want to push these things? We want you to be able to get as far as you like to with automation and tuning and machine learning. But at the same time, if you're not ready to take that step, or if you have concerns about using a solution like that, we want to meet you where you are and create value however you optimally want to achieve it.
Yeah, it's the same. I would say for us is like, you know, maximize usage is like, I would say both platforms and products alongside each other and standalone can do broad, very immense things, but it really comes down to like, what is your comfort levels and what level of automation you want. And so we provide a lot of configurability. I know DefectDojo is exactly the same in terms of like, how far do you want it to go or not go? And that's part of building in a way that, you know, really in our world developers can trust and lean on these platforms to do as much as they are comfortable with. And along the way, you know, you probably saw in the demo there, but like we spend a lot of time making sure that we give as much context as we have, so that there's a lot of visibility and transparency in what we're proposing and how we're proposing it and how we got there, so that we can build that level of trust, right?
Okay, great. Thank you. We are going to move on. We have also, because we have these two experts here, we just want to talk a little bit more about DevSecOps and just any security program and how they leverage automation in general. And so the first question there for Surag is, what are some of the key objectives of a DevSecOps program?
I probably need an hour done to answer the question, but I'll give you the kind of quick summary. I've been talking about DevSecOps in a past life and here at Pixee, of course, for, I don't know, the last 8-9 years. And I think the main ones I would kind of say is like, it comes back down to me is like, really, I think some of the key pieces are like the unified program between security and development. I think that was always, teams always felt like there was a wall there and they needed enhanced collaboration. They needed a program and a structure for that. So I think DevSecOps provides that. Driving developer engagement and interest and involvement in driving some of the security objectives of the company and the team. So to make security programs really more developer centric in many ways, and that can mean a lot of things, but I think that's a key part of it. Obviously, reduced overhead between development time and security time. It's not just saving developers. Like security is a very overworked and understaffed team always as well. And so how do we make that much more efficient so that we have better outcomes in terms of whatever those outcomes might be for your organization around security or efficiency or productivity. And then of course, like it's the early detection and resolution, I think is a big part. Like a lot of, you know, the synonymous with DevSecOps is often shifting left, which I may or may not like that term, but the idea being let's get early detection and resolution as much as possible to make the rest of the cycle more efficient, let's say.
Great, thanks, Greg.
So when I think about the key objectives of what I want to see in DevSecOps, I typically separate it into what I want to achieve for individual contributors, people that are actually tasked with the technical work of security, versus metrics that leadership should be paying attention to. And so for individual contributors, what I hope you will get out of DevSecOps is the first and foremost automation, a lighter workload, and then I think how that can translate into helping the business is getting to ideal test coverage. Without leveraging DevSecOps, you really can't get to a place where you're testing your entire company. And so I think one of the key KPIs is what percentage of your company you can test leveraging DevSecOps in your security tools. And then moving on, like what are your key standards for passing and failing a given build? And then finally, having a way to get visibility into that testing. So if you're just running these jobs in your CI/CD platform of choice, GitHub, GitLab, Jenkins, etc., you don't really get into visibility in terms of what's going on, what's passing and failing, how is the health and posture of your organization trending. And so I think those are sort of the key metrics and how I hope also individuals ultimately benefit from achieving those.
Okay, great, thank you. Next, and that kind of follows on to what you just said, Greg, is how do teams measure success? We'll let you take that one first.
Oh, sure. So before going to sort of the vendor side of things, if you will, I spent 10 years in pen testing and automation and all the places that I worked prior to Dojo. I've never seen two companies that care about the same metrics. You can also have people that look at the exact same data and come up with a different result. Like, is it good to have your tools report more things week over week, or is that a bad indication? You could say your test coverage is increasing, or you could say our software is getting worse. You can look at the same metric and come up with two different conclusions. At the end of the day, I think it comes down to any security control should be about preventing breaches. And so I think sometimes that gets lost. Philosophically, I think it is much better to build a moat rather than a shiny tower, and define what needs immediate attention or how you prioritize versus what is just good hygiene.
Yeah, and I think Greg, I would add to your context, like we've heard that all of those things a lot. I totally agree that every team, enterprise, organization, function, product, whatever you want to call it, will have different measurable outcomes as they go through it. I don't know. I've seen some tactical things on how they measure success. I've seen some like developer centric and security centric. I've kind of seen every end of this spectrum. But like on the development side, like you often see things like how high is your automated test coverage? I think you mentioned this just before. Like, have they reached a level of automation that they feel is ideal for their organization and their team? Are they pushing deploys or branches or releases as frequently as they want? And the underlying current there is like, hey, we've got our automation to a place and our security to a place and the program in place where we can push a release daily, let's just say, or twice a day, or 3 times a day, or 3 times a week, whatever it might be. Obviously, the volume of vulnerabilities and both things, like how many criticals and highs and mediums and things do they have from the various scanners, as well as like, are any open or unremediated, and then how long does it take to get them fixed? Like all of those kind of being metrics that I've seen in DevSecOps programs of measuring success. And then I think the last one that's kind of really got a lot of notoriety the last year or two, and I think is really important from a developer end of the spectrum, is like, what is the developer experience like, right? We talk about like, how long can developers stay in their flow state where they're not being interrupted and they're just like building output, features, capabilities, whatever. How often do we the second piece being like, so maximizing flow state, reducing the interrupts, like how many interrupts do they have, and things that take them out of their cycle. And then finally, like the feedback time, like when they need feedback, they need support from security or someone else, can they get it quick enough so they can get back to to what they want to get to. And I think all of those things have very key kind of success metrics when it comes to DevSecOps programs that we've seen kind of qualified in some very large organizations, I'd say.
Okay, thank you. So I think next, got a good picture of where things are now, but what does the future look like for DevSecOps? It will even be called that. And how close to what we're talking about today and the integration of our two products and platforms how far do we take people towards that ideal state? Surag?
Let's see. I look. I think I'm very excited for the future. I'll start there. I think there's so much opportunity ahead of us. I see amazing platforms that have become very mature and widely used, like DefectDojo is a perfect example. And then I see kind of younger, newer technologies that are still finding their ways, candidly, like Pixee. But when you put those things together, I think you get really exciting outcomes. And I think we have a path now that I honestly didn't see even 3 years ago or 2 years ago, for that matter, where I think we're at a point when it comes to like the future of application security where you truly can get to almost, I'm not gonna say not quite autonomous, because I don't know if we really want that, candidly, but like almost fully automated end-to-end cycle with humans in the loop at only the right places for only a very specific amount of time, where they can just make sure that stuff is staying on the rails, right? And that they're able to kind of keep things there. And so I think we have a path towards like extremely happy developers, extremely happy security, believe it or not, and everyone kind of working together in a way that's very efficient and effective. And as they go through it. So I think, like, the prioritization, elimination noise is absolutely essential. I think, of course, the maturity of Dojo, we kind of see that coming to reality. And then you layer on stuff like where we're focused, but there's not just us, there's other folks focused on this as well, both vendors and platforms, where the idea being, can we automate the elements that haven't ever been automated? Like developers rewriting code, that's the only path to remediating a SaaS scanner finding effectively today, right? That's really literally the only path, is you create a Jira ticket and you let a developer go fix it. And I think we've got to a point where, with very, very high levels of quality, high levels of automation, and confidence and trust factors, both with and without AI, to be clear, I don't actually think we need AI for a lot of this. We can actually automate a lot of that effort that does take up still way too much time from developers and development managers. I see GitHub report of how much time developers spend on fixing security vulnerabilities, and candidly, it's just too much. They should be spending more time writing features than working on that. Greg, I'm sure you have a lot to add. I'd love to hear your perspective.
Yeah, I too, I share Surag's excitement. I am very excited for the future. I do agree that with respect to security specifically, the applications for AI and machine learning are very, pragmatic, just because of the nature of which we address in the breadth of security overall. But the strides the industry has made and is making, when we look at this end-to-end process with Dojo on the testing and the aggregation side, and Pixee on the remediation side, is extremely exciting. When I started in security, we were working in Word documents, and that was our idea of high tech. And to have platforms today where we can actually scale and achieve this, and make this end-to-end automation journey a reality is just incredible. And I do think it'll only get stronger. I think we'll continue to mature and find the places where AI and machine learning makes sense, but I don't think we'll get to the point where AI is effectively replacing entirely what people are doing in security today, rather augmenting.
Totally agree, 100%.
Well, that kind of begs another question, and I mean, maybe our audience members have ideas of what they'd rather be doing, but when these developers and security folks get all this free time back from these platforms, what are the projects that they can tackle? What are the things that maybe they're missing now or don't have time to get to, that can advance the business, that kind of are taking a back seat today?
Surag, do you want to go first on that
Yeah,
one?
I'm happy to. I'm happy to. I've heard there's so many that come to mind, but I just say like there's so many strategic and maybe higher level thinking order of operations. I think most of us want to spend our time on, especially these folks, these highly experienced, knowledgeable AppSec folks and team members like that. Threat modeling. You know how many times I've heard the word threat modeling, but when you ask most teams, like what does threat modeling mean to them? In most cases, it's the most trivial of trivial kind of basic information that is threat modeling, or architectural planning up front, security architecture, all the stuff that we can do and should be doing. We just don't have time to because we're chasing down a SQL injection vulnerability that takes us hundreds of hours between arguing and proving and finding who needs to fix it, making the code change and testing the code change to fix what should be hopefully trivial things. And so I think my hope, Don, is like by getting developers time back, two things happen. One is they can spend more time on the things that drive business outcomes, features, performance, quality, all of the things that make their team and their company and their business happy. And B, give them time, give the security teams time and development teams time to work on the higher order magnitude, the higher order concepts, security concepts, threat modeling, planning, strategically prioritizing, like, hey, what vulnerability classes are most important to us based on our business, our context, and our data, so that I can set the right policy and then get the prioritization and stuff through Dojo, and then get to remediation as much as possible through something like Pixee, for example. And so I think it's just really kind of shifting their limited time to arguably the more thoughtful and strategic elements of security programs.
Right.
I'm excited for both individuals and the programs at large to get a win. I think that both benefit when we look at the automation space. I think prior to platforms like these, the job of a security engineer was near impossible to do. And so what we saw for both companies and individuals was sort of this endless cycle of companies trying to scale security by purely investing in headcount, companies getting tired of that investment because it is extremely expensive, and then ultimately ending back in the same place of not being able to scale the programs and thus a breach occurring. And so I'm excited for the possibilities of both. I think security engineers will get a job that is actually possible, and a security program with a mission that is also achievable. And the other area where I really hope this translates is in burnout, specifically for security professionals. We have some of the highest burnout in tech because of the nature of our work and the stress. And so I hope whatever you choose to leverage also buys you some breathing room there as well and improves those metrics.
Yeah.
For the individual company.
Very great. Thank you. Are there any other questions from the audience? I don't see any. So if you two have any final thoughts, and then we can wrap up.
Yeah. Just in terms of, final thoughts and what's next, I think what Pixee and Surag are doing in the auto remediation space is extremely exciting. On the Dojo side, we're going to continue to look for areas where machine learning specifically can be applied to centralization and posture management. I do think there's also opportunities to innovate in the tool space where the scanning is actually performed, because most scanners still to date are just looking at sort of request and response data. And so when I think about where I'm hoping I'll see other innovations in the industry is in that space. I'm hoping that will evolve both so Dojo can enhance data in new ways, and likewise Surag can drive auto remediation in other interesting ways as tooling hopefully evolves as well now.
Yeah. I look. I see. I think there's so many directions. I've appreciated as part of during the integration process and our learning and kind of all of our conversations. It's great to see kind of the outcomes that Dojo's able to drive with amongst users of kind of getting to this holy grail of prioritized backlog and being able to kind of focus on what matters, of course. And so I think that's really exciting, and where that continues to go, Greg, with all the stuff you mentioned, I think is exciting. I've also, like, you know, every day I'm in a fortunate position. I get to talk to various like security leaders, CIOs, other founders in some cases, VCs. But I think the exciting thing is, like, as the more and more I talk to, especially the practitioners, like, and the vendors in many cases, like, the technology really is top notch. When I get most excited is when the outcomes are real. Like, when I hear CISOs telling me like the kinds of outcomes they're able to drive, the types of things that they have this backlog of XYZ number of vulnerabilities, and when I get it down and they actually feel like that's possible now, even as, you know, Greg, as you mentioned before, like, as the role of security engineers gets harder and harder. Just imagine now, like, all of our developers now creating 40 to 50% more code. Like, life sounds even more scary, as stressful as it is today, with their AI co-pilots writing a bunch of code, some of which is good and some of which is just vulnerable, because it's going to be. And so I think that challenge is like a impending challenge that will happen, but I think we're prepared for that. And so I'm excited for like the outcomes we can get to together. And the advancement in kind of closing of gaps where humans are doing a lot of repetitive tasks, right? I think there's so many opportunities that they can redirect their limited time towards. And I would just kind of, I don't know, like the optimist in me is like really optimistic, but I think also the kind of skeptic in me, the piece I would say is, you know, on the AI front, generative AI front, like, look, we are huge fans. We use it in different ways. We use it only for where it's uniquely valuable. But I would say, like, I've already started sensing the trough of disillusionment, as folks will talk about, because of, you know, where it doesn't work, which is totally reasonable and fair. So I think part of like what we're getting to, and the industry will, I think, really quickly evolve around, is things like generative AI. Machine learning obviously has very specific use cases that are extremely valuable. Things like generative AI have a lot of exciting outcomes, but we've got to use it precisely and for specific cases where it's been validated and proven, not as a blunt instrument everywhere. And I think that's what will get us to outcomes that we all want. And I think I'm really excited for when that comes together in the industry, like what we're going to see is really, really exciting. Some of the case studies that we're going to start hearing about will be, I think, amazing. We'll see automation that we've never seen before, which will be really fun.
Okay, great. So thank you, Greg and Surag, and everyone for joining us today. We will have the recording available for you probably by tomorrow and send that out to everyone who registered. And if you have any further questions, don't hesitate to contact either one of our companies. We'll be also each posting up a blog about this integration, and you can learn more there about all the capabilities and try it out for yourself by downloading the open source products. So if there are no other questions, I thank you again for your time today and for our panelists today, and have a good rest of your day.
Thank you all. Thanks, Tom.